Total Cult.
Good evening, sperm and spermatozoa. This is the Total Cults podcast, and you are listening to myself, James Trick.
And Dr. Gogol.
Today's show, we're going to be looking at sequels and how far we are prepared to let these things run before we put them out of their misery with some kind of bullet to the skull,
Yes,
or spiked implement to the base of the neck. What's the longest you've ever followed a series for, or the biggest digit you've ever seen a movie with at the end of it? I don't know quite how to structure that sentence.
Yeah, no. I imagine the one I've maintained my interest in is probably the Friday the 13th films.
Right, okay.
Of which there are 8.
Oh, no, more. Jason X is the 10th, isn't it?
Of course, yeah, Jason is the 10th.
And then you've still got Freddy vs. Jason after that, and then the reboot.
Yeah. So I've stuck with them. And with that kind of formula, I think it kind of works. I like the fact there are so many of those films because it's one of these things. One of the reasons why I like genre is it sets up a kind of predetermined expectation that you can go in and you're going to be comfortable. You know what's going to happen, and then it allows people to come in and play with it a little bit. Right. What I also like about those films is the fact that there is some degree of continuity in the fact that Jason gradually looks shittier and shittier as each film comes on. The damage he sustains in the previous film seems to stay the same.
Seems to carry through.
By the end, by Jason Goes to Hell, basically the mask is like just about covers his eyes and his mouth, and you can see pretty much his insides hanging out and stuff like that. Which, as you know, I always love.
Absolutely.
So there is that. I mean, you know, it's hit and miss like everything, and
they're not.
Even the hits are, aren't exactly knocking it out.
Hit is possibly exaggerated, but I mean, they're not a downward spiral, are they? The Friday the 13th movies, 6 is noticeably better than 5. 4's a good one. I'm trying to think. I don't even particularly like these movies yet. I've already got a sort of One gets the credit because it's the original. Yeah. 2 introduces Jason because the first one is Mrs. Voorhees, isn't it? 3 was in 3D, so you get that weird sort of gimmicky thing going on. You get people juggling, overhead views of people juggling, which I always enjoy. Yeah. Because it's a shot that obviously would exist if they weren't filming in 3D.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then the 4th one's actually really good.
You love balls coming at you.
I do. If you can orchestrate something that gives me the feeling that these balls are just about to slap me in the face, it increases my enjoyment immensely. The 4th one's got Corey Feldman in it, which obviously immediately elevates any film.
Crispin Glover is in.
Oh, he does a shit dance, I seem to remember. He does a lovely shit dance.
Really shit dance.
Look up Crispin Glover Friday the 13th dance.
And then he gets corkscrewed to death.
Does he?
I believe so.
As punishment for the shit dance.
So,
which one was that in? 5?
No, I got. Well, I think that's isn't 5. I think 5's the one.
5's another one without Jason. It's a copycat because they kill Jason in the 4th one,
right?
And so it's a crappy copycat in the 5th one. All the fans went, no, we want proper Jason back. So they went, all right, and they dug him up and stuck a thing in him, and he gets hit by lightning, and he comes back Frankenstein style.
Okay, so that's mine. What about yours? Now you have. I'm not Critters. Is that one of them?
I enjoy Critters, not sexually, but on a.
There was no need to bring that up.
I could see it in your eyes, frankly, that was where you were going. That line of questioning. I do enjoy Critters. Yeah. Not sexually. And in fact, I've got a T-shirt that just says "I enjoy Critters" and then a little brackety section.
So normally that's tucked in, so you can't see it.
Yeah, because you don't want to shut down the possibility, do you? But yeah, Critters, there's 4, so it doesn't really. They don't really go up to the upper reaches of numbers here. Yeah. Although the 4th one's in space, I think Friday the 13th held off putting it into space until the 10th. Yeah. Which is, that's really holding out. Hellraiser went to space on 4. Yeah. Critters went to space on 4. Leprechaun went to space on 4. Yeah. 4 seems to be the perfect time to go into space if you're a fucking terrible series of films.
So, technically speaking, Godfather Part 4
would have been in space, and I think it would have been a better film for it.
I think so. I'd like to see that.
And that advert would have been, she'd have gone, I like old movies, like The Godfather 4. Yes. And then he says, is that the one in space?
Yes.
And she says, yes. And it's great. And
that would be great.
They'd have sold more, whatever the fuck it is they're selling.
Yeah. So what's your biggest number.
My biggest number. I've seen Witchcraft 10 and 11. I think. Witchcraft, I think, have gone up to 13.
Now, I'm not
like
familiar with this as a series.
Have you never heard of them?
Well, I'm sure I've seen a film with either Witchcraft in the title, but I wouldn't realise it was an ongoing.
No, the covers always had a pentagram and a sort of stone effect,
right,
and a large-breasted woman. Seemed to be that was the vibe they were going for initially.
Again, this sounds familiar.
To start with, they had some sort of budget behind them, and then by the time it gets later in the series, they just let anybody make a witchcraft movie. You could walk out of here, make 2 phone calls, and be filming a witchcraft movie by the end of the day. They would just basically give you a camcorder, give you some lesbians, and just say, "Have at it, sir. Make us witchcraft 27."
Okay.
But the interesting thing about the later witchcraft movies is there's an attempt to introduce, if not a sort of series chronology, there are recurring characters, but they don't really make much sense as they hop from one movie to another. But there's a name of a detective. I'll have to look it up. But yeah, the witchcraft movies made it up into certainly around about 13 or so, and they're sort of kind of. Whether they really class as films is, in the loosest sense.
So, do you think there is value in these sequels?
Witchcraft specifically?
Well, in any of them. I mean, if you look at a lot of people will bemoan the current. When you go to the cinema at the summer, all you've got to choose from is remakes and sequels.
Yes,
and this is number 2. Not so and so 2, another sequel. So. By the time we get to, whatever, part 8, surely all value has been lost.
It depends.
Or is there more to be had?
I think it depends on what it is. I think that an idea like witchcraft, you can continually expand the mythology. I think you can basically say, there are large-breasted women conducting black magic is a theme that you can expand upon more or less forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so some things deserve sequels and some don't. I mean, Police Academy, I think you could safely say, couldn't be explored in just one film.
No, there is a greater mythology that needs those films.
By the time they completed the first one, it hasn't even introduced the bloke that goes, ah! It's got the bloke that goes, but it hasn't got, ah! So
in the books, did he come in... He was in the first book, wasn't
he? The books are a very, very different continuity. I mean, there's a lot more. It's a much broader canvas. There's a lot more generations of characters, and of course, there's all the sort of subplot about the sword and the chosen one, which the films really didn't even touch on.
Well, they never really got to, because that would have happened after they returned from Moscow.
Right,
is when the sword was introduced in the books.
That's true.
Which they didn't even get to. I can see that. I don't personally think that sequels at all represent a lack of imagination.
No,
I think there can be a more cynical money grabbing element there, but I think that if you look at any story, film's actually quite unusual in that. It's a complete cycle, it's that 3-act structure and it's done with. If you look at stories elsewhere, either it's through, taking these characters and telling them again and again and again, or in the whole process of storytelling where one person tells someone else a story and someone else tells that story, and essentially the story gets remade each time it's told.
Right.
That remakes and reinventions and sequels and reboots are actually fundamentals in storytelling, in passing stories from one person to the next and making them relevant for a new audience or a new culture or a new context. So I don't believe that doing so should be viewed as cynical. I think cynicism does play a part, but I think generally speaking it's essential to storytelling. These things get retold. Sorry, have I raised the tone?
Can I do the Police Academy funny voice again now?
You can do that. That's good. So, yes.
We're just both operating on really different levels on this show, aren't we? I agree. I mean, I think that there's a place for it, and there's a place for going back to things and looking at them again. I mean, I think the Bond movies kind of have their own chronology, but they are to a degree reinventing themselves and saying, let's have another look at this hero from a slightly different perspective, which I think is kind of interesting. And that kind of happens with superhero ones every time someone fresh comes to Batman. that sentence sounded horrible. Every time someone fresh comes to Batman, something unexpected's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I think there is kind of a threshold whereby there needs to be a point where people accept something going in a new direction and it becomes okay. So if you look at the Bond films, no one gives a shit whether Roger Moore is the same Bond that Sean Connery is, whether it's a chronology.
I care.
But surely that means that every Bond film just falls apart at the seams, because there is no possible way that could be all happen in the same chronology.
Yes.
At all.
That's why it's all spoiled.
Right, exactly.
It should still be Sean Connery.
Yes, but then...
And then when he dies, they've either got to Weekend at Bernie's it, or that's it.
So, for example, watching Quantum of Solace, I
have to watch that.
Imagine the old
it's
Sean Connery. Old Sean Connery.
Very, very old Sean Connery.
Old Caribbean Sean Connery.
Well, except it's set earlier in the chronology, isn't it? So it could be, except it's got digital thing. You see, none of it works really with...
Well, that's the problem. So, but generally speaking, that doesn't bother anyone.
It does bother me, though.
Well, yeah, but I think generally speaking...
Normal people.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, if you took something like Spider-Man...
Yes.
Okay, and you... at the moment, people are kind of confused and disoriented and upset that, well, is this the story from Origin again? Is it the reboot? But this is the threshold. Once this happens in one cycle, or once it begins a new cycle, it won't matter. Same with Batman. No one gives a crap whether Dark Knight fits in with... No one normal gives a crap whether the Dark Knight is part of the Burton chronology or whether it's actually Adam West or
Every time someone fresh comes...
Exactly.
The chronology, the mythology starts all over again.
Exactly. So, and that's something that needs to be adopted into other superheroes, because you can't have the same actor playing the same part until they're 70.
I think it's healthier to look at all these things as campfire tales. Yeah. I think it's healthier to look at them that I'm not looking through a window onto a world that this character is inhabiting. I'm watching it at one step removed. I think if a lot of the fanboys would be able to stop getting themselves quite so wound so tightly with, although I say I care about that with Bond, I don't give a shit. I was saying it just for humorous effect, not that it was particularly funny. But it was also, I was goading you in some ways with a stick to justify yourself. And you did that very well. But I don't give a much.
Unusual.
Yeah, I don't give a toss about any of that stuff. Yeah. And that's because I do look at it as one step removed. Yeah. It's like, ultimately, I'm not looking through a window at James Bond. I'm watching an actor portraying James Bond. And that's not to say that I'm not suspending disbelief. Of course I am. But I'm always looking at this as ultimately, hey, this is a different spin on this story that there's this character of James Bond and here's all these different interpretations of it. And if you straitjacket yourself so much that you can't do that, you can't have fun with it, then what's the point? So I agree that there's not much point trying to work out whether Batman Begins fits the same mythology as the Burton Batmans, which I don't think that they're particularly, I don't think they mesh particularly well together, but I don't think that matters, because I think ultimately they're all just different stories.